Inside Digital Transformation Podcast. Inside Digital Transformation explores how organizations of every size and shape are using technology today to survive and thrive in the face of relentless change. If you are a business or technology leader charged with making the most of digital transformation in your organization, then this podcast is for you. And now here's your host, Alan Bernard, a technology journalist, editor, and copywriter who has been covering the intersection of business and technology for over 2 decades.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today I'm speaking with Bob Almond, COO and founder of Full Armor, about how to define and implement a zero-trust cybersecurity architecture in your organization. We get into what's driving the need for zero trust, how zero trust differs from traditional approaches to cybersecurity, how to define what zero trust looks like in your organization, what additional point solutions, if any, you'll need, since most of what you need you already have deployed, and then the mindset changes zero trust requires in order for you to be successful. Full Armor is a white label developer of cybersecurity products for some of the biggest brands in the IT market. So, Bob, thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
So I like to start off every podcast because it is, obviously, we're talking about digital transformation, and it is such a unique, individualized topic, right, for people and industries. Depends on your industry, depends on your business, your level of IT maturity, right, where you are on that curve and things like that. So I was just wondering, do you have a definition of digital transformation that you like to think about or work with as you go through your day?
For me, I think that digital transformation is the real purpose is to make our lives better in whatever industry that we're in whatever our area of practice or concern, so that whether you're at work or you're doing things at home, digital transformation is about making those things easier, doing your work easier, doing your errands easier, everything from, again, from your work to your home life being made easier so that you can actually get to and be involved in the things that you really want to be doing. So digital transformation for me is about making our lives, our work lives, and our home lives better.
Huh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I mean, everybody has such a different definition. I'm always like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. That works. So I have one that I've been throwing out there in every podcast. Wanted to get your take on it. So it's using digital technologies to change the status quo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Listen, digital transformation, I've had a lot of friends that I've talked to. They see it as, the emergence of, and then eventually the, call it disruptive technology that changes the way we think, changes the way we work, changes the way we buy groceries. And, if we look back over the last, 20 or 30 years, there's a lot that can be said about this evolution of the internet and shopping to the cloud and cloud-based applications. And now everything's on your phone. And, if you want to make a dinner reservation, boom, you can do it in seconds on your phone. You don't have to go home and get on the internet and call the restaurant. So disruptive technologies change the way we think and change the way we work and act in our work and personal lives. So it kind of bleeds back into what I was saying about trying to make our lives easier and better so we can focus on the important stuff. But yes, disruptive technologies are a core part of that, changing the way we look at a problem or look at the way we do and live our lives. And again, hopefully to the betterment of society and mankind.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to today's topic, which is zero trust, and trying to define that or put a working definition around that so that it's not just this concept out there that people are trying to throw solutions at. So what is zero trust? Let's just start with that high level and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So, I think we have discussed in the past that zero trust is being presented by a lot of different people with a lot of different agendas in a lot of different ways. But I think at its core, zero trust is part philosophy and part, it's changing the way we think about how we protect ourselves in this digital age. It's taking that walled garden of the all on-premise world where you kind of had some level of control of who got in and out. Maybe you had some VPN access, maybe you didn't, but it was easier to keep the keys to your kingdom protected inside of those walled gardens. Now, the barn doors are open, the horses are out of the barn, everything is available, in the cloud, through your apps, through traditional internet website stuff. And organizations, I think, largely, and I think we discussed this in the past, largely because of things like shadow IT, where the prevalence and the emergence of application technology, especially in the workforce, people were going out and they were signing up for, any number of applications. I won't name names because I don't want anyone to feel bad about it, but you can think of the top sales applications and HR applications and things that would allow
document sharing are the big ones, collaboration apps, right? Yeah.
All of those things, people were going out and without ever going to your IT administrator, they were signing up and they were throwing it on their company credit card. They were getting 6, 8, 10 licenses. And all of a sudden, all of this data that had been controlled on premise inside the walled garden is now out there on the internet. In fairness, being protected by those companies and their security measures, but it was clearly outside of the control of the company at that point. And half the time, maybe more, maybe less, the IT administrators, the security, the CISOs, they didn't even know that it was happening. So the rise of zero trust, I think, really was born out of this realization that the way our security infrastructure was being set up in the past, and the way the people who work, the CISOs, the security, officers, the IT administrators, they really had to take a peek at the landscape of the way things are, and had been, and say to themselves, is this going to work going forward? And the answer was clearly no. All of the things that protected us in the on-prem world are not going to protect us, or largely won't protect us in this new open, on-premise hybrid and fully cloud world. So zero trust comes along as a call it a new, slang term. And most people have gone out and said, I'm going to sell products around zero trust. My product is a zero trust product. It does cloud backup and recovery for, against ransomware. And then you've got other people's doing single sign-on and multi-factor authentication, and we're zero trust. Then you've got policy management, authentication, authorization, and, a persistence of policy. All of those things can be sold as zero trust, but really they're products that are enablement technologies that can be implemented in a true zero trust environment.
Okay.
And
go ahead. So what is a true zero? Go ahead.
Yeah. What that means when I'm talking to CISOs, when I'm talking to security administrators, I'm basically saying you need to put down on paper, brand new, clean sheet, clean whiteboard, whatever it is, and you need to map out the way your organization works today, the way you want it to work today. On-premise, hybrid, in the cloud. You need to throw everything else, take everything off the table as the way we protect ourselves today. And you need to start over with a zero trust methodology. You need to look at all of the resources. So your users, your devices, how you do authentication and authorization, all of your network activity, all of your peripheral devices.
Partners.
You need to look for all of your partners. If people are coming in and out of your environment, whether employees or not, you need to look at all of those things. You need to look at the infrastructure that you're running, again, on-premise, hybrid, and fully in the cloud. And you now need to map out a plan that starts with the premise of, we are going to start from a position of zero trust for every user, every device, every peripheral. Everything that happens in a user's day is going to start from the standpoint of, we don't know who you are. We don't know what you're doing.
Well, let's also add from every microservice and every application on the network, actually, right, as well.
Everything. Yep, everything. If you look at, I think you and I have talked in the past about, the GSA put out a zero trust user guide that again had nothing to do with products. It had everything to do with a philosophy and a methodology for government agencies to go back to the beginning and say, how are we truly going to map out and plot out our course to zero trust in this new environment where you have on-premise, hybrid, and fully cloud assets that you have to protect. And there are these tenets of zero trust that the government came up with: rigorous enforcement for authentication and authorization, maintain data integrity, gather data for improved security, consider every data source and computing device as a resource. I mean, there are a bunch.
Yeah, well, that's that resource point. For the folks taking notes at home, NIST has a document, SP 800-207, that goes over a lot of what you're talking about, right? But they in there, one of the points they make is you should substitute the word resource for user, for application, for database, for network, for right, and then it allows you at least to I think more easily get your mind around what it is you're actually trying to do. In reading through this document, what struck me is there are some castle and moat doctrine in here. There is some of that in here. So you can build trusted enclaves, for example, and put a gateway in front of a trusted enclave. That's a group of microservices that are aimed at one business process or one workflow, right? And that's still zero trust, even though once you get inside of that enclave, you have free reign. So how strategically, how does zero trust differ from that castle and moat mindset?
Well, I would actually argue that true zero trust, it doesn't stop once you're inside the walled garden. Once you've crossed the moat. For me, zero trust is even if the user gets in, because let's remember, you can buy, for SSH, RDP, there are keys in the wild, VPN can be defeated. You can have people that come in that look like a legitimate user with legitimate credentials. Now they're inside. If you don't apply a zero trust methodology to everything inside the walled garden, those people are going to be able to move laterally through your organization after that breach, and the keys of the kingdom will eventually be theirs. I believe zero trust starts at a core level, for every part of your organization, regardless of whether or not it's 100% on premise, hybrid, or 100% cloud. You have to have it so that even if a person authenticates, even if that person has authorization to get inside the walled garden, you still then have to track their behavior. And they have to validate against the places that they're going and the things that they're doing. People in finance might not necessarily deserve access to source code. So that's an aberrant behavior. It should be flagged. It should be stopped. They should be forced to, authenticate in a different way to prove not only that they're them, but they have access to that. And that red flag should be sent up to IT, and IT should be saying, wait a minute, what is Bob doing in dev? And hey, maybe it's legitimate, but zero trust starts from the premise of we're going to make you prove it all along the way.
So can you talk about that a little bit more and discuss the tools that you want to have or the tools that you need to look at in order to at least get that first layer of zero trust in place?
Sure. Yeah. So, once you've taken that clean whiteboard and you've started over again and you've looked at your organization holistically, and you've looked at all the resources, again, using the definition we came up with earlier of what a resource is, and you've looked at all of your resources, and you've mapped out sort of the life cycle management of all those resources inside of this environment. Now you can segment across your environment and say, in the life cycle management for these type of activities, and it's going to be different in different spots, I'm going to use these type of products, and it's never going to be one product. It's never even going to be one suite of products. It's going to be multiple products, multiple companies, that you're going to have to work with. And you're going to go out and say, all right, we're going to start with, multi-factor authentication so that you're making it easy for your users to sign in and authenticate and prove that they are who they are. Okay, step one. Then you come in and you might say, all right, the next step is I want to do strict policy enforcement, and I want to make sure that those policies persist. And as part of policy enforcement, you're not talking about one product. You could be talking about a PAM solution, privilege and access management. You could be talking about, a group policy tool that manages all of your group policies that dictate the rights, security, and otherwise for users and devices. You could be using a directory resource, product. You could be, there are a dozen products that fit into the identity and access management
Cloud
family.
access service brokers, right? SASE, Secure Access Service Edge, I think, right? SASE, it's the worst acronym in 20 years in IT, but there it is, right? Zero Trust Edge is an example of that, right? SDN falls into the zero trust because you're able to turn functions into software and make them logical and therefore push them out to the edge, that kind of thing, right? All of this can be part of that zero trust technology framework, right?
Exactly. And you're gonna have SIM products that are doing your monitoring and alert.
Yeah.
And you're gonna have your either on-premise or remote cloud backup and recovery stuff, just in case you get hit and somebody gets through and does the ransomware stuff.
Well, but to me, that's different. That's recovery. That's not going to fall in. Zero trust to me is all about prevention, right?
Well, the thing is, part of that prevention, in my opinion, is actually paying attention to the backup piece. Because if you fail to do the backup piece, now prevention becomes the only thing you can do. You need something in place that protects you if somebody gets through and the bad actor is actually successful. So for me, at least that backup piece is part of prevention.
Okay.
Because it prevents you from being completely at the mercy of the bad actor.
Many of them you already have in place. Most of them you probably already have in place, right? IDP, right? Simple AV on your laptops. You got VPN. You're using cloud firewalls or web application firewalls, right? And so you already have all these tools. So how do you configure that environment, your existing environment, for example, to make it more of a zero trust and less of a castle and moat approach?
Yeah, well, I think we referenced this a little bit earlier. I think some of it has to do with picking products that give the IT administrators the most flexibility to manage how users work, their lifecycle management of all the tasks and things that they have the authority to do or not to do. And if the products that you're choosing are one-dimensional and they don't give you that flexibility and they don't actually interact with your reporting and alerting, software that helps you, track when somebody's going awry for good or for bad. So I think that it's picking the best products and picking the products that have open API, infrastructure that allow them to communicate across zero trust product solutions to get the best possible coverage and the best ability to adapt over time, because you're using, any one of those technologies we talked about when partnering with a SIM is going to give them better alerting, and those reports are going to come back, and those reports become a knowledge base for you to determine what is aberrant and what is normal behavior for a device, for a user, aka resource. So, I think it begins and ends, with changing your mindset to, I set this, I'm good, to I set this and now I monitor it, I pay attention to it, and I adapt as the environment and the user experience is changing. And I think that's part of this zero trust mindset that the GSA document was trying to get across to us. Is this isn't a set it and forget it. This is actually a philosophy for the way you view your organization and every resource that's going to interact with it on a day-to-day basis.
So do you put the user at the center of your thinking? Because ultimately, any user can be defined in my world as an application or a microservice making a call to a database, for example, or another application, or another microservice. Does it help to do that, to put something at the center of your thinking and then, kind of radiates out in a hub and spoke sort of approach?
So the simple answer to that question is, I'm not sure yet. I would say that as myself, my firm, as we started to embrace, this philosophy of zero trust, I think I probably defaulted to that. So, and again, as we defined user the way you just did, that it wasn't just a physical human being, but also these devices and these processes that were taking place that mirror the behavior of a user. So if you take all of those resources, I probably would have said, yes, let's start with them because we can't trust them. And we need to make sure that everything we're doing is around that. Because again, most hacks are behaviors that are imitating legitimate resource behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And if you just say, well, you know what, they authenticated, we're good, you're going to end up in a lot of trouble. Now, I think over time, I'm now sort of less sold on the resource needs to be the center of the spoke. I'm not sure we're in a world anymore where that center and everything spoken out from it is actually the right way to look at it, because I think different areas of your organization present different types of threats. And I think you have to be flexible enough to look at each one of those areas and then look at each type of resource or process that's taking place. And you need to almost say, for this section of zero trust, this is what the center of the universe is. And over here, yeah, it might be, quote, users, but over here it could be something completely different. And if you don't have that flexibility, if you're not, able to adapt, I think being rigid hurts your zero trust philosophy and methodology. I think when the IT administrator, when the CISO goes into it saying, hey, I've got 20 years of experience, but you know what? In zero trust, I'm a little bit of a newbie, and I'm going to act like a newbie, and I'm going to approach zero trust like I don't know everything, like I don't have all the answers, so that I can adapt and be flexible. That's the best, I think, mindset to have going into it, which is, again, one of the reasons why I think even my own beliefs here are evolving over time. And when I brought up, remote backup and recovery, I probably was where you were, 18 months, 2 years ago, being like, yep, different bucket. And now my zero trust thinking has made that landscape so much broader that it's squarely in the bucket for me. And that's for me. And
so I think part of what the challenge is for the current state of cyber in many organizations, I don't want to say most, I haven't seen any surveys, I haven't done any surveys, but is there's a product focused mindset and then an outcomes focused mindset, right? When it comes to cyber. And I think maybe today it's still a products focused mindset, because that's the way it's been approached by the industry, that, the cyber industry. It's you're selling products. And so you're selling a point solution to a given set of problems, and therefore it becomes a product focused approach to securing the organization. Where if zero trust to me sounds like you need to shift to an outcomes focused approach.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really reasonable statement. Let me break it up into the two parts that you discussed. First, I think the natural inclination of any company that has a cool cybersecurity/security product, and they want to take advantage of being inside of this zero trust, sort of initiative, they're always going to default to selling their product as zero trust. And they're probably not going to spend that much time mapping out a giant, landscape of all these other things you need to do that will complicate them selling the one thing that they really care about. And that's normal. I think every company is going to focus on the things they do well, and they're going to use the culture current terminology like zero trust to be effective in doing that. And in fairness to them, they are part of most of them, I think, are part of that zero trust solution.
So let's talk about that. What is the outcome, right? And for everybody, again, just like digital transformation, it's going to be very different. And it's going to also depend on your risk tolerance around a given business process, right? For example, or given data set, right? And so how do you get your head around, because, the old way of thinking was, well, not the old way, but one way of thinking of cyber is lock it down. And you can be completely secure. That's actually, you can do that, is my understanding. You can lock down the network. And if nobody has access to the data or applications and it's air gapped and no one ever sees anything, it's completely secure. But of course, you can't do anything. You can't function as an enterprise in any given way or any meaningful way. So how do you do that? How do you, I think it goes back to your whiteboard probably, and maybe looking at each each business unit, each business process, each, order to cash, fulfillment, these different areas, and defining maybe a risk tolerance for that area first, and then working from there down, as opposed to maybe by other approach, which was putting the user at the center, for example?
Yeah. So when I hear the words risk tolerance, that for me is a practical application decision that has nothing to do with the aspirational decisions of zero trust. Zero trust should always be the absolute goal is zero, fall down, zero attack, not attack, but zero penetration.
Complete security, right?
Complete security. Knowing that that's an aspirational goal that may never be achieved, apart from I thought it in my head and never said it out loud. Okay, you know what? There you go. There's your walled garden. I win. Right. But short of that, it's an aspirational goal when you start to talk about, the zero trust. And when you get into risk tolerance, now you're basically, you've said, I know what my goal is, but I also have to get stuff done, and I've got to get it done in a reasonable time frame. I can't be the IT administrator getting, I mean, look at single sign-on. I'm going to name names, and I apologize. I'm not saying anything defamatory, but Ping is one of the leaders in the single sign-on space, like Okta. And Ping's number one feature that they were selling against, 5, 7, 10 years ago was password reset. So basically what that meant is that you had a ton of IT administrators who were setting strict guidelines for password lengths and when you had to change it and all this other stuff.
I remember that changeover, believe it or not. I remember when that started to change.
Yeah, and the users were still being the same users they always were, forgetting their passwords and not changing them and whatever. And so they started calling the help desk all the time. I need my password reset. Now all of a sudden, a security administrator who was trying to make the environment more secure was spending all of his time taking phone calls and answering emails to reset passwords. Boom. Ping, Okta, these guys come on the scene. They have an automated way to do all this stuff, to do the password lengths and change enforcement and all those things. And I stopped getting phone calls. Woohoo! That's the practical application that came after the aspirational one of making sure that we were more secure and had better policy around our passwords and the enforcement. So I view them as slightly different things, those sort of aspirational goals versus those practical reality goals. Right. If that makes sense.
No, I'm following you, because, well, it's the Post-it note issue, right?
I'm going to add one more thing, because when we were wrestling with a little bit around the backup and recovery and me pulling it in, one of the reasons I think, very much like the example I just gave with Ping and Okta, the aspirational goal that you're going to block incoming phishing attacks and malware and ransomware, that's your aspirational goal. That's your email. Hey, here's my banner at the bottom that says this is external. It's not really, Bob over in accounting sending me this email. All of those things you've implemented. The problem is you now have a practical thing that you need to do. So you take, I have no ties or connections to these guys, but I'll name one, Haiku Software. Haiku Software does remote backup and disaster recovery. And they're out there selling and saying, hey, we're going to make sure that you don't have any business interruption, because if the guys get through after you put up all of those other measures and countermeasures around email and phishing and malware and whatnot, we're still going to be there for you. And so somebody like Haiku, for me, gets pulled into that zero trust bucket because you have a practical application goal apart from your aspirational goal.
So it's interesting. It's a nice segue. I think maybe we can wrap on this one, is what zero trust is not. And I think the word that always jumps to mind, there's two words in IT that get tossed around a lot, and that's paradigm, but panacea is the other one. And it's not a panacea. And that's what I've heard you talk about now from the beginning of our conversation. It isn't, because there isn't one, right? So talk about that, because it goes to what you just discussed with the bringing in backup and recovery, the practical application of zero trust. You have the aspirational, you have the practical, and that panacea just is not part of the practical application of zero trust, right?
Yeah, you actually just helped me form a new opinion. I'm actually I'm almost feel like I'm working through a difficult text in college as we've been going back and forth on the aspirational versus the practical. It's really the aspirational that is this zero trust philosophy and methodology that the organization needs to kind of adopt and adopt in a manner that is always the aspirational goal. And then once you've set up that aspirational goal, now you get into the practical application. You get into the products and the solution sets. You get into the processes on how you dictate behavior for users, whether they're coming and going, whatnot. All of those things are now those practical application and versus the aspirational. And so I think when we talk about something something where there's a quick fix versus something where it truly is learning and adaptive and flexibility, that's what happens when you adopt the appropriate zero trust philosophy and methodology. You've looked holistically at your environment. You've broken it up into the appropriate, areas that need to be covered and protected and monitored. And then you go out and you do those daily, weekly, and monthly, tasks to make sure that you're plugging all the holes as they present themselves and trying to stay in front of the bad actors 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The aspirational versus the practical. And none of us, until the day we take our cell phones and throw them into the Charles River along with our laptop and truly go 100% analog, until that day, it is always aspirational, and it is always the vigilant nature of what IT security has to do to stay in front of the bad guys. So it's probably a long-winded answer. I apologize.
So the answer is it's not a panacea.
Oh, yes.
Right?
It's not absolutely. It is. Yeah. I thought I wrapped it in there, but yes.
No, you did. It was great. You really brought it back, man. I was like, he's doing it. He's coming back. He's got it. He's got it. So, okay. All right. Yeah. Cause there is no panacea in life. No. I mean, there's no 100%. There's no, guarantee. There's nothing,
Nope.
So, all right. Bob, thank you very much. This has been great. I really appreciate your time today.
You know what, Alan, I had a lot of fun doing this. I hope even 2% of what I said makes sense to somebody out there.
I'm sure you're fine.
I really do just want to thank you, because working through a few of these, larger zero trust, complicated thoughts and theories, I actually formed some new opinions that I didn't have when I woke up this morning. So this was, if it's valuable to no one else, it was valuable to me. So thank you very much. Well,
it's valuable to me too. So no, thank you very much. I appreciate your time, Bob, as always. If you like this episode, please tell your friends and subscribe. We post new episodes every week. If you'd like to join our mailing list, become a guest, or suggest topics for future episodes, you can find us on LinkedIn, on our landing page at anchor.fm/InsideDT, or at InsideDT.net. Talk to you soon.